zoom, and it's not even that expensive. And
Yeah.
there's a little clip I saw on this camera zooming in to the moon, and I was blown away at how close it was. Actually, I was like, wow. I mean, it was really cool. I'm gonna have to find the name of that camera because it
Yeah.
wasn't that expensive. So,
And they move and everything, with the stars, they can move.
mm-hmm.
If you ever look in on some of these stars, they'll look like a giant Merkaba kind of thing up in
Right.
there. They'll be bouncing around. And
Yeah, yeah.
this really what puts stuff in perspective for me is that our neutron star right here spins 700 times a second. And, when you spin faster, you create a magnetic field. Uh, there's like the relativity of time, is one of Einstein's, theories of relativity. And if you look at how fast the magnetic field goes and spins and this and that, as let's say our magnetic field is, a day to us is in respect to, maybe 2 days on Mars. And, a year to us is like 13 years on Mars. But so when we look at something like that and we say, oh, the wind's blowing too fast that there can't be life, it's all going to be in aspect to the relativity of their time. And I really, really noticed this a lot with I was messing with the pyramids and actually trying to figure some stuff out. And I know that we've been going here long, so I'm going to be real quick on this. I'm just going to just whip through right to here. And if we just look at, if you notice right there,
North Meg-
okay.
the small red bull responds quite differently, as you can clearly see.
So right here, if you see how they're moving
Now
a
you see
satellite,
how the orbital distance of the small bull set is determined by the
do you see
spacing
that?
between the large red
Yes.
And as it separates, that's showing you that the bigger one needs to be, as the planets got bigger, they would push it out further. And so as these magnetic fields expanded, because as the poles got separated, it would make a bigger donut. It took longer to get to, the small one, so the satellite would get shoved out. Here's another thing on the ancients. I mean, this is plasma discharge for this right here. This is a hieroglyphic that was done 8,000 years ago. The truths are is that it's a lot more, they're technologically advanced a lot more than we think. And it's done across all of these hieroglyphics. And, it's amazing. Now,
Have you heard of Richard Hoagland?
no, I haven't.
Well, I'm just bringing him up for a moment because he's very well known in different circles like ancient astronauts. There's a lot of evidence, like I guess you could say, geometrical type shapes and patterns and stuff that from different NASA satellites and JPL photos, you can see what looks like these ancient structures, not only on our own moon, but some of the moons that orbit Saturn and other planets as well from the shots that they got back from Pluto. So he kind of thinks that these structures are based on an old type 2 civilization that could be millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of years old, where a type 2 civilization, as you know, is way above and beyond what we currently have the abilities to do, at least that we know of, because we're not even a type 1 civilization in this specific type classification. So it would be interesting to think if possibly a lot of this orchestration and stuff like that. Do you think that that is a possibility, that there was this civilization that kind of created the blueprint for life here in this solar system and let us go, and there might have been some type of cataclysm, kind of like what you're referring to with the Antichrist, the yin and the yang?
Absolutely. And I believe that to the fullest. And now, it's funny you said that because I've seen some of those shape powers that's behind, like Saturn's got like a hexagon, and our moon's got them sometimes.
Well, you should see the moons, man. Just real
Yeah.
quick, one of these days you should check out Iapetus and Mimas, and then check out Phobos. These are three moons. Two of those orbit the inner rings of Saturn, and Phobos orbits Mars. And I'm telling you, man, that just the anomalies on those moons, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing that they can get some of those pictures because that's a long ways away. I think Phobos travels it like I mean, it spins quick. It's only like 15 miles off Mars.
And it's small.
Yeah, it's real small, like 10 miles or something, or smaller.
It's like sponge type material too. I mean, back in the 50s, the Eisenhower administration, the science guy said that was probably artificial. So yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, and I don't believe that all the things that we've said we've done. It's tough for me to say that they say the moon moves back 1 inch a year, and they could tell Jupiter's times down to like a quarter of a second on 13-year cycle. Or
right.
I'm like, come on, dude, you can't even
It's crazy.
count our tax poll or our voting. It's tough. But if you look at this right here, and this really got me as well, is we have the swastika in like 30 different areas. And I'm just going to flash forward here real quick while I have this. Here's a magnet that's underneath a swastika cut disc. And when so all he did is touched it with a positive and negative. And as soon as you did that, it instantly, positive, negative, a magnet underneath it. And what that does is it creates its own magnetic field, its own apple shape. And when you're doing that, you're bending. A good movie to take a look at if you're interested in it is called Quantum Levitation, where they actually freeze something, they put magnets, it bumps it up, but it creates its own magnetic field and it bends the magnetics around it. And when it does that, it bends gravity. Gravity is not a force that pulls you all the way to it. If we looked on those balls, when we pulled the balls apart, it pushed it back. It drops you in a field range to where you fit in, like rings on an atom. And as those rings on an atom spin and spiral and go like the cone and torque themselves into their field ranges, as far as that said, that's going to be your time. And I know that's kind of tough to grasp. And I put the magnetism where I did on the electromagnetic scale and fit those things and found the links to, the most magnetic properties matched biblically and all this. But when you look back on history and you see that there's actually in history, there's times where the Earth slowed down because of an asteroid. There's a lot of things, and I know that I wasn't really sure if I was gonna say any of this, but like look at this right here. Here's a Sumerian thing, and it's talking.
Hey, go up for a second if you would.
Yeah.
Just I want to check out up a little bit more. Right there. Yep.
Okay,
go down a little bit. Go down a little bit, or just yeah. Hey, look at that thing. Yeah, that looks familiar.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And,
I'm referring to the hand there.
Oh.
The hand with the circle in the middle of it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Go ahead, please continue. I was just it's a little inside joke there.
Oh, okay. Well, that's it's meant for peace and all that, or Hindus. Same thing is that in religion there's specific things where when I broke this down, it's going, and this is so hard to kind of explain, but if you take religion and push it all together and you have all the religions, all the way down to how the Jewish has married rights, to that the temples where the pagans took over the Jewish had gold covered in magnets, to the 8 Crusades, to the Hindu is a magnetic side of it, and the electricity is the light, the Jesus side of it, and you can actually look up and find where Jesus was considered a fallen angel inside the opposite religions. And it's like every perception is a different angle, and it's like it's not saying who's right and wrong and who's what. We have to open our eyes and look at it. And if you look at the fact that if you design the 8 Crusades and where we were at and what years we were there, and the Babylonian Tower of Gold, it designs the QEG. That's Tesla writing this. And I tell you what, his patent didn't match that at all. If you have the circle and a circle and a circle, Ezekiel's square, the pagan flag, the swastika, any of those things, it's this inside the 3 circles, and you have the 3 discs around it, and it creates, when you shoot it with electricity, it spins, creates this thing right here.
What does the hand stand for? below
The
it in ancient texts? I know
this
there's a lot of interpretations of it, but what was it back then?
I think it was like I know that it was considered a luck or good fortune or to the pagans this event is actually considered a new beginning, where to us it's or Christianity would be considered the end. If you look at Shiva right here, there's a swastika in 3D, and she comes and destructs it and gets it ready to go again. If you look up here in the top left, there's our basically Israel's got our alternate current symbol. And what's wild about and what's wild about it is there's always like in a lot of these biblical and all that, there's three of them going one way, and there'll be one going the other way fighting it, and that goes back to the like 3-in-1 power, where your magnetism is going to be like a third the size, your frequencies. And I noticed this when I was doing and this is what I wasn't sure if I was going to explain, because there's some things that you kind of protect yourself on, and this right here is mine for me. And
Sure.
I sped the frequency up on my here, I'll show you. I think I have a couple of pictures right here. I sped the frequency up. Here's the devil picture if you were interested in knowing which one it was, where you invert it and it shows the twin towers and all that burning the other direction. You can see like 8 different things on that, but I made these pyramids and these things in my room, like a bunch of them, and they were big, and they increased the magnetism. And right now I pulled 12 volts off of.
Can you zoom that in a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is just showing wavelengths. I wanted to just show you some of these real quick, but I increased the magnetism and the magnetic power and the volts with shape power, and I got 12 volts off of just the shapes, and there's another magnetic field right there, and kind of how that is. But I pulled 12 volts off of my my shapes, and it matters where the moon is, where all this stuff is. I had this pyramid, and it kept falling off the ceiling and ripping in half at 5 a.m. every day, and I couldn't figure out. And it turned out to be where Jupiter was aligned. And it also sped up my frequency a lot. And I couldn't figure it out, but I started to see things that weren't really there. And in order for me to, I couldn't tell you, that's how I know that these pictures change the way they do. I have probably 500 to 1,000 hieroglyphics on my walls, just all over the place, and so I see them all the time. So I noticed the subtle changes, and we're talking like some things would turn black, some things would turn the other way. It would shadow in, and it's really tough because it happened, and I've never seen things that weren't really there. And finally, I realized that it was because the magnetic frequencies increased, and I've gone on a lot of recent research with this, and got with lights and their wavelengths, and it all came down to the frequency of certain things. And I changed the sounds, and I would cross sounds, and I found in some of this ancient and biblical work, it'll actually give you instructions if you can get your frequency high enough to see it. It's kind of like a protective kind of shield, where it won't let you see it unless you're ready to see it or can see it.
Let me
And
jump in
so,
real quick, because you're talking
yeah,
about the pyramids that you built. Now, I've read multiple books on pyramid power. Dr. Patrick Flanagan. There was also another one by Max Toth. And then there was one
Dan.
by Christopher Dunn, where he talks about how the ancient pyramids were probably some type of like harnessing energy system, like a power plant. So now there's
Yeah.
been a lot of studies on pyramids built to Cheops specifications, whether they were built with cardboard or aluminum or titanium or steel or any material, that created certain effects that one might call anomalous, like keeping razor blades sharp longer, keeping food fresher longer. Pets would want to go sleep under these pyramids wherever you put them in the house, and they would calm down if you had to leave them in a kennel, etc. So,
Right.
so I mean, there's definitely something to it, but there's going to be a lot of people out there that might say, I mean, this is that I'm just going to tell you up front, they're going to be like, wow, man, this guy he was hitting on some really scientific stuff, and now he's bringing up pyramids and saying he can see things that aren't there. So, so let's just get the genie right out of the bag. And I appreciate you bringing this up because there could be something there. I'm neutral on the subject. I think it's fascinating, but I don't know. So let's get into this for the skeptics out there. I mean, how do you think that you see these? I know that you only see 0.01% of the electromagnetic light spectrum, the average human does, and then their brain filters out about 50% of that. So we're going to talk about this telescope also that you brought up to me before the show that can see things that we can't see. Let's get into that too. Let's segue into that. But how do you think these pyramids allowed you to be able to see different parts of the light spectrum and stuff? Or can you still do it? And what do you see and what did you see?
Absolutely I can, and I could do it. And that reminded me about the file that backs it up. Now, so here's like wavelengths as your fractionals grow out, it's gonna, you have little waves that go in between these. Now imagine these as like frequent, like let's say one of these is like a cycle that's in here, and every so many cycles you're gonna end up on like a node or a point, and that's where you get your key musical notes. Your octaves. On 7.5 it dies down, and there's a space, and there's the 8th one. What's ironic is you have the Zai dynasty lines up and has 64 kids, and on 53 they have twins, and it's weird how it lines up, but it's not only science, it's our history that's lining up like this. Look at it's a lot, and I'm not going to get into complete detail here. We'll be here all day. But now these octaves kind of line up, and they're all over, and they're in the history, and they're inside. If you look at like the Sumerians, and inside the hieroglyphics of so many things, it's in there, it's hidden, and they're wavelengths. They're depicting wavelengths, and I do want to show you. I'm going to do a little a paint drawing just because it will kind of explain this, and it'll explain evolution and what I see in that, because it's big, and it's here, and it's like a real thing that's going to happen. And this is kind of intimidating, and this is where I kind of drew the line with the government was being polite with us. So our magnetic field is, I mean, it's big, and it goes around everywhere. Okay. So let's say here's Earth, and our magnetic field goes out like this apple, right? Well, when it goes around like this apple, it's spinning one way, coming out the North Pole. It's going to continue and spin right out the top. Now, what is big here is that when Nibiru, and it's moving, and it's twisting and pulling, and I'm sure this is the last thing that some people... So here's this right there. I'm just going to fill it in.
And you're saying that not only did this gravity wave, this like giant pulse, tap into Nibiru or Planet X or whatever you want to call it, this planet out there, and it's pulling it in, but not only is it pulling it in, it's also bringing in like a neutron star?
Right. Well, no, it is a neutron star.
It is a neutron star.
Right.
So it's got planets and moons and stuff around it also?
Yes, it does. That's your 7 heads, your 10 planets, all that stuff.
That's where you're linking prophecy and revelations.
Right, and that's where it is. So here would be Nibiru, here would be Earth, and we're gonna make it real close so we can see it. So, and then, so there's there's this line right here it's connecting, and so it took our grab away from the moon, and it's swinging our spin up this way. Now the difference in in that specific magnetic element and other ones is the direction of its spin. And it spins one way. And all of our atoms and everything else spin the other way. Now, here's what happens when you change that. Now, here is the zodiacs, and we're going to just draw a little X on them. And, we travel the zodiacs. It's obvious, or, a lot of people believe that it changes energy. I don't have 12, but that's okay. So as we go around one of these sides like this, as we're traveling around the zodiacs give all of our energy, okay? And the shape of the zodiac, the type of energy that it's giving off, its magnetic properties, how strong it is, it affects every cell on the way. And this is where you get all of your elements in the God's God. It's up there. And the shape, I have something I'm going to send over to you right away with the other stuff. It's going to show the zodiacs, and it's going to show an inverse of the actual wavelength that happens. Now, I thought it was zodiac symbols the entire time until I realized that the one right behind it's a three-dimensional inverse. And it's one of those questions like, how did we have the name of the planets due to what size they are all the way back into Hebrew when we just found out its properties 100 years ago? So
right, it makes no sense.
none. And so here's these waves that come out like this. And now what's going to happen is, depending on which one we go through first, whether it's this one or this one or that one, it's going to make a difference on what material that what crosses first. Is like, do you mix acid before the base? Is that going to make a difference? Well, of course it is. So as we go through, you're going to have 3 changes right there. And if you look at the amount of time and how consistent these changes are with the disciples, and in all religion, as one falls, the other one picks back up. It's kind of like how Jesus is 33 years old, or however they are, and the Smithsonian's have us on a 400-year cycle, and we go through every 30 years. We change the mentality of our brain completely. It's really out there. And so as we go through these changes here, it's going to make a difference in our brain. Now, the Egyptians...
I'm thinking of Bob Fletcher. This guy's a researcher on Nibiru. He actually used to work for some different government organizations, and he broke free from the Borg because of he didn't like what they were doing. But regardless, he talks about these papers and documents that are out there that say that the gravitational pull, or something with the gravity, might get so out of whack that it's gonna basically turn a lot of the people here on Earth into zombies, like basically like The Walking Dead almost. Not quite as extreme, but that type of scenario.
And I don't want to sound out there too, but they're conditioning us to accept that fact. If you looked at the government grants that they gave out last year, 90% of them were survival. Now, I don't believe that it's even going to help, because as Egypt has in ancient Egypt, they had like an anti-element for each one of ours. We have 117. We've made some of them artificially, but under certain conditions, they had an antimatter for each one. Well, if we're spinning, if we're spinning one way, right, then it's going to, if let's say here's our one spiral on this side, I'm just going to draw it as little spirals, just make it a little easier. So if one's spinning this way and the other's spinning this way, it's going to be completely different. And so if you look at through a lot of these these swastika spirals, and where they show the different spins, they show a spin a different way. So it's like this Hermes staff. As it spirals around, it's going to go one way or the other, and it's going to create matter in a completely different way. Now, I'm going to just go out there and say, when I sped my frequency up, when I did these things, I started to see things that weren't really there, that nobody else was seeing. I'm not going to say that wasn't really there. And if you want to look more, search this right here. Here's the properties of the zodiac and light. And just like Jesus is the light, everybody, the light is different. It's big. And origin of matter wave. Okay.
Now, did this say this is from the University of Seoul, Korea?
It may have.
Yeah, okay, I just read that at the top there.
Okay. And now this one, this is apparent detection in new telescopes and concave lensing otherwise invisible terrestrial entities. And this is, I mean, they have.
This is cool. This is really cool. I saw this the other day.
Okay. And yeah, and right, yeah. And so when we looking this stuff up, and you know, I didn't know what to think of it. I was catching them on pictures and cameras, and I was watching it change right in front of me. And you know, people could be like, "Oh, it's in your head," or blah blah blah. Well, I was showing them to other people and friends, and they were like, "Yeah, I see it." And then later they're like, "Yeah, it doesn't look as clear anymore." And you know, as your frequency changed up, what I later found out is if we look on this electromagnetic spectrum, is our visible light is right here, this little teeny sliver. Well, as I was speeding up my frequency with the pyramid shapes, with all this stuff, the planetary alignments were adjusting differently. You know, the North Pole became south in a lot of ways. It slid over. I started to be able to see outside of my normal spectrum where other people weren't really seeing it. And they were these entities there. And, you know, I thought I was going crazy, and I'm glad that they pulled up, you know, NASA kind of pulled up those, you know, it was said on some talk show, and it was some NASA report, or I want to say NASA, but anyway, so I pulled up that same report, and to be able to have the report meant a lot. Now, if you think of primal lighting here, now we can make so much with. I'm just gonna pull up. Oh man. With a
check out that semi truck.
Yeah.
Now you're pulling out makeup.
I do it all.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay, so this is better. So let's look at this right here. And sorry. Oh wait. Okay, so as these cross right here, so green is actually a prime light color, not a color, but so as these, if you look, as they cross, they make these different colors. Well, so if the spin was going one way, it would make the regular colors, and then the other way it would make an inverse. And because you're kind of seeing it get pulled from, you know, one direction or the other. And I have like 30 lights around my room, and it you know, at first it was just to kind of see the direction and stuff inside these hieroglyphics. And then later I realized that it wasn't for the hieroglyphics, it was for your head. And I've gotten instructions on, do you know how you block sound waves but with other sound waves?
I don't know.
Okay, well, if you have like a specific frequency and a specific amplitude, if you match it going the opposite direction, it'll hit it and cancel each other out. It's like you know, sound cancellation, or you know, it blocks it. Now, with light and electricity frequency and, you know, the electromagnetic frequency, your heart makes the magnetics. It controls your brain's thoughts and emotions. With your emotions control its rationality, because it's more like a computer, and you're more of an emotion. Your heart's more emotional. Well, when it took me through these steps where it had me like add up something and think, and it was, you had to have an imagination, you had to feel it. You know, there were several steps that you did, but it was like the magnetic frequency from your heart blocked certain waves during certain thoughts. And it took me through the same thing, and it drew it out to the centimeter, and it wrote it out, you know, it was basically a picture of Jesus going around and explained how to block the different frequencies and waves. And if you send those same electromagnetic pulses out and block the natural electromagnetic pulses, you can cancel them just like sound waves can be canceled.
You know what I'm thinking about right now as you just said that? Have you ever heard of the infamous Funvax?
No.
Okay. Well, some video footage got leaked several years ago from a supposed meeting with some people at the Pentagon or the Department of Defense guys, and there's this one person up at a whiteboard talking to the audience, and they're discussing this new vaccine that will basically eliminate the what they call God gene in the brain. The part of the brain that connects to faith-based type, whatever religion it is. It's just, and they were saying it's, to get rid of the extremism in the Middle East and the jihadists and all that kind of stuff. And they said they were going to use it. It was almost going to be sent in a aerosol type manner, kind of like a virus or something. So when I heard that and what you're talking about, it's making me think of maybe there is a connection there, and if they could combine something with a sound wave with an actual injection of some sort in the body or some type of ingestion of some sorts.
Yeah. Recently, here's my concern, and definitely the biowarfare is nasty, especially if they have these technologies that they're not sharing with us to figure out so long ago, and there are these we may have contact with other terrestrial beings. I'm going to promise you that there's dimensional beings, and that you vibrate to a point, you can go right through it and be in somewhere else. But there's the biowarfare is scary, because if they are that smart, then what next? Now, we do have crop circles. We do have these things that show signs. We've seen tapes of UFOs doing 90-degree turns in 1 second. Huge G-force turns that shouldn't be possible. Now think of this: if they sped up their magnetic field with this kind of swastika shape and their electromagnetics, and they have these things, they would increase their magnetic field in perception to ours. And so their time would slow down in perception to ours. So they might see us and go, hey, we're moving really slow over here. And they start to turn like a normal grandma driver, but in perception to us, they just turned it at 1,000 miles an hour, just turned an instant corner. But they slowed the time down because of the spin factor of their elements. And I do believe that there's things like the biological warfare, but recently all memory except for the short term has been proven to be in the magnetic field. Now, here's where I think that there's going to be the issue with Nibiru, because I've pulled up encrypted things that I broke down out of pictures and just, like I pulled the right page number out of a 500-page book with a B in front of it, with the graph, with the name, the date, and all these things that just wouldn't be possible if I had gotten it wrong, and found things in there where these cycles happen often, or more often than we'd like to see. And you can notice this in history where, the Henry VIII and all them, they fall right into these octaves, right into these trinities. You have the sisters inside Hindu. You have these events happen so frequently on the same day, and I'm putting together a big list of them right now, where all the way to look at William Shakespeare, his 38 plays, they line up just like moon cycles. I have some on my homepage that'll kind of show some of that, but we have the trinities that happen repeatedly, and these events happen so frequently, they're so consistent. There's a point where you got to ask, is this consistent or is it not? And like, let's go to Shakespeare, or it's just so free. It's so, the February 2nd or 7th, you're going to have these events. The 6th, it's all, and they line up with the holidays. On the 3rd, okay, let's say about on the 23rd, when the weather changed, we had 100 floods across the world. the the military sent off our army to dispatch them to help with floods. On the 12th day of Christmas, when the 12th drummers drum, we had 8,000 earthquakes. When we on the 13th, when we sent off the sun chasers are hunting the sun, we have on the 6th of this month, we had like beheadings and crowns were taken over and all these things. When you look at Nikola Tesla and you look at like William Shakespeare, they're born on a solstice and a summer. Their days that they're born, they're all born on the same thing, depending on if they're more magnetic or more electrical, if they're controlling the moon or the sun. It's a duality, and it's so frequent, and it's like our entire history didn't happen. If you look back, December 6th, when that lined up, December 7th was the following day, depending on where we're at as far as Gregorian calendar rolled over. What day did Pearl Harbor get bombed? It's ridiculous. It all lines up on this whatever you want to call it, a code, a formula, because it just it's whether it's astronomical or history repeats itself and we forget, it all lines up on top of each other in sequences, and it's ridiculous how similar it is repeatedly and how it lines up on specific notes. And it's like 19.4 degrees is where we have this event, that the Pearl Harbor,
Did you say 19.4?
Yeah.
That's I gotta interject just again, man. Richard Hoagland, the guy I was just talking about, he brought up the 19.5 factor, how that's a real powerful number, not just in numerology, but also in geology and the entire universe. I mean, that the number connects to a whole bunch of things. So please continue.
It does. And when you look at the Sri Yantra, and I just built one, a two-dimensional one, and I'm sending you all these because they're on my phone and I can't do it on my computer, open them up simultaneously, but I don't want to risk losing you. But the 5 pyramids down, the 4 up, if you look at, you have Teotihuacan matches the footprint of Giza, the 3 pyramids up there, and the spin, it's like a corkscrew goes through the earth, like they're controlling because if you take the earth and you made it a crystal, and here's to get what I kind of tie this into, because all earthquakes are made by an energy sent from the sun astronomically. It is not millimeters of shifting that happens over long periods of time. Whoever says that, the driving force is the magnetic flux. Now, it leaks out on the Pacific Rim and all that stuff because that's the weakest spot. Yes, but when the sun shoots a solar flare, it's like an energy charge, and then the earth has to burp its magnetism, and it has a duality, and the magnetism is what catches the water and puts a wave from Washington State to Japan. It's not 1 millimeter a year over 300 years, and a 20-inch jump doesn't do that. It's a magnetic flux leaving at the speed of light that blows all the water over there is really what happens, and it causes the issues and the power surges and all these things that are negative. Well, as the world spins around its rotation, it becomes off-kiltered by a little teeny bit each time it spins around. And so the direction, let's say once the Nibiru comes up here and does its cycle at 3,600 years or however long, and it's just off just a little bit. Well, at the end of that cycle, you're going to have a remainder that kicks it out of proportion. And if you make a Merkaba and you look at the crystal inside there, if it was a vibrating crystalline structure, and once I made my first pyramid, I thought that the crystal and the pyramids were actually made themselves by the cornerstones are slabs, and when they vibrated energy into them by directing it in there, it created them. It sounds tough, but I watched my pyramid realign every single time to north, and mine's hanging on the ceiling, and it realigns every time.
Are you using a specific material?
I made my first pyramid I made it out of zinc and aluminum and steel. It depended on the angles because I countercrossed them so that the electricity would go up opposite corners and the magnetism would go because aluminum's not magnetic. And then I made it in layers, organic, not organic, so that when it saturated its magnetic properties, once it got full, it would push it off so that the energies would cycle into the middle.
Did you
Uh,
build it to any specifications?
I built it to an equilateral pyramid. I
Is
I
that Cheops specifications?
It's the 52 degrees, like the Giza, the that kind of specific one.
Okay.
Now Giza is specific to the speeds of lights and stuff, but I'm building two other things, and those pictures will come with you as well. You can flash them up right here. But one is a something that is a three-dimensional shape that I pulled out of specific hieroglyphics and those things. And I actually did the math on it and got the harmonics of the planet and the lengths and all this stuff. And when I was all finished, I came up with all my stuff off phi ratio, and it was all on Fibonacci, and it was all perspective. It was all done where the harmonics of the planet would amplify and help. And it came out that my length was exactly like to a less than an eighth of an inch off of what Giza and Maya, what they all use as their qubit. So I felt good about that. But if you take the wavelengths of the planet and the sounds and the harmonics of the planet, you can actually control the frequencies of each of the bars. Where that what's that Leonardo da Vinci one where his man spread his arms sideways and
Yeah.
he's sitting there. He's got, if you look at a lot of those, he has like a tree of life written on him. And so I used those exact shapes, and I used metal and where it would amplify known key harmonics to those frequencies. Like the 429, or sorry, the 432, the 528, those frequencies at the chakras in front of where it's at. And that's something that I'm working on right now, but that math problem, those were gnarly. So as each of these shapes and these things, I believe that the earth is a crystal. And you have people talk about the hollow earth theory. Well, if you vibrate, they did this with Ormus, or monatomic gold, where it vibrates to a certain point, and because of its shape, it could vibrate at a faster point, and it shoots its energy in, where it would actually vibrate to a point where it would vibrate out of our vision. Kind of like, from red to infrared, there's a point where you can't see it anymore. And I, all of these pyramids, and after looking at the stars, I really believe that they don't point up there at Orion's belt and do that. I think that they almost project that light up there, because I have a lot of photos where I've taken of the moon, and I've seen things morph into something else, and it just does not make sense, and it doesn't align, and how far the moon would be, and I mean, I've seen crazy stuff just appear on the moon, and I really think that as the magnetic field increases, that it's cognitive in some sort of way. If all of our memories are there, it really concerns me as far as the symbology and all this stuff, because our magnetic field's changing. We have my head's starting to hurt on certain areas, especially near the pyramids and those type of things, where if I'm on the wrong side of a bar, it's either positive or negative energy. Now, if you look at the moon and sun temples in all the religions, they go from, there's drastic changes. And now if we have this frequency change or shift, it's going to spin the magnetics the other way. Now, people can say that, our frequency's increasing. Well, no, if everything stays the same, there's no way that it can increase, because the frequency goes off the speed of light. At 7.83 hertz, light travels around the world 7.83 times a second. And that's at the speed of light right now. So unless you're increasing the speed of light, there's no way that it's going to increase that, the hertz, the frequency of the planet. That Schumann resonance is going to stay the same unless you slow down time or unless you manipulate something else. And then that's the case, then it's going to increase the speed of light. It's going to change our energy completely. And just as we would travel around the zodiacs and those frequencies would change, we're going to have our Jurassic evolution. Now, there's over 100 pictures of, dinosaurs and stuff like that that are on different that are with people. Now, how do you dinosaurs with people? That's pretty it's hard to show like 100,000 different carvings and stuff with dinosaurs and people and dragons and those type of things. And it's that's something that we don't want to really admit that it's there or it's possible, but it really is. And it's, if we change our frequency, and Miko said this too. He goes, we're like sitting here with our own grandmas, and they're just on a different channel. As we could change the radio, it's kind of like that with the frequency of our planet. So as these frequencies would change, it would tune in at a different point, where these waves cross. And that can change stuff drastically. Now imagine this giant magnet coming towards our planet, and if you look at the sun and you change the like some of the how good it what do they call that when you well, whatever, you change some on the light setting, it changes its exposure. You change some of these things, and you're gonna find a point in the sun where it turns it like a silver or a black. And it's because that's where the wavelengths are. You're hitting your nodes at different points. The sun is bright right now because as this magnet with a big field around it got sucked into the sun, once it hit that sun, it's burning it faster. You can look up where we're at zodiac-wise, and I read the other day that we're behind on it. And it would make sense, because if you slowed, as that magnet started slowing down the spins of everything around us, it would slow time in a way. And I know that's might be a little bit tough to grasp right there, but it's let me click back on the spiral. So as this spiral, if it spun faster to a center point, it would be sending time one way, and if it went out, and it would have radiation like it's dying. And that's how your elements are going to decay from, whether it goes from mercury to lead or mercury to gold. It's going to depend on if it's gaining energy or it's losing it. The frequency, though, of the light, when they say that Jesus says this, the light is everything, or I am the light, I am, when he's the light, and he's what these colors, and they're crossing at different points. What I believe is that there's more lights than the prime colors that we see, because when I put this lensing up, and under the different color lenses, I can see into different octaves, and I can see different things. And it's, if you're not ready for it, don't do it. I'll tell you that, because there's like some things in life you can't undo. And this is why, some of the reasons why I didn't say something about this a long time ago, and it getting close to this point, I think it needs to be said, is that the colors in space, the different color lights, the different kind of lighting as we travel to zodiacs are going to cross just like this, different ways, different directions, different everything. And as we get to different points on that zodiac scale, we're going to see huge evolutionary changes. And if you go back and look at when these events happen, there's a plague every time. The first thing that's going to mature is going to be bacteria and viral. The first thing that we lose when our magnetic field shuts down is our immune system, and it's going to cause issues big time. Our brains probably, that bacteria evolves just like everything else. If you look, we've had species that popped back into our evolutionary cycle just recently. There's going to be specific, this is how our DNA is made. It's made by the crossing and spin of the light photons and energy that leaves these zodiacs. And it's going to be drastic, and it's going to cause a huge evolutionary change. And every time when it happens, you know, we go through these cycles and whatnot, and it's because the energy. If you look at, if you put your sun on a plant or your garden for a year, it would grow good, and if you took it away, it would grow down, and that's where that cycle happens. When the magnetics push and shift and let all of our methane hydrate out, that's where our ice age happens. That's where our volcanoes blow up. That's where our giant decline in humanity happens. It's all astronomical. It all ties into us, our cycles in life, and our brain cognitivity. We have been proven that we have a telekinetic energy. Our memories have been proven to be in the skies, like, or in the magnetic field. And when you use CERN, it jumps out, and those CERN reports are ridiculous. How on point they are, like they're falling out in a cycle, like everything's supposed to happen for a reason. And
Well, and let me jump in real quick because you brought up CERN, because I know that, you know, we've been discussing some of these other things, and I'm glad you finally brought up CERN. So, like, you said you had some information that most people don't have, and I was hoping you could share that with us.
well, I mean, I had access to any of those same reports, and you know, and the thing is that really, you know, when when you mess with the frequencies, and I've seen this, and it's kind of scary, is it's like there's other octaves. Okay, so let's imagine that there's other octaves that, oh, I thought it was still other octaves that are on the scale, right? That we can't see. So let's say that there's.
Can you go back to that one telescope or that new infrared type deal that you had a picture, or you were looking at the white paper a minute ago?
The spectrum?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was just gonna pull one up here because I just closed it. Okay.
Was that white paper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a picture. I mean, there's tons of these like this.
No, not the picture. The actual white paper, the
Oh.
document on the new telescope or not the telescope, but
Okay. This?
the lens. Yeah, the lens.
Yeah.
Yeah, the telescope. Here we go.
Okay, cool. So with this, what they're doing, depending on the concavity of the lens, they're bending the light in a specific direction, and you know so when you as you bend the lens,
And can you scroll down a little bit?
I can, yeah. And I do have a something on my desktop. I believe that'll help with how this works. But as the lens is curved differently, it makes the distance from you to the lens or the mirror further or closer depending on how it's concaved, so that it bounces in a different direction. And so what it'll do is it'll make objects, like kind of like in your car, objects in the mirror closer than they appear. It'll control how far that object is depending on how far the light is, so you can in a way like beat light to the where you're seeing. And what is really kind of creepy about when you see these things is if you look at them, they like freeze. It's like the time slows down for them. And if you watch them move, some of them run off different lighting, and it's like the different light fuels their time. Where we have our sun, whatever red light we're getting it from, and as I change the light from a green to something else, it would increase their energy drastically. And you know, when I first started messing with that stuff, it was like I thought that there was like a little demon messing with me, and he was gonna get me. And over a long period of time, about going through, and it was like it was harassing me and bothering me, and like I just was like, I gave up and was like, dude, I wish you good, man. And it was like my anti person, the energy that makes me, there's like an opposite. And during certain times of day, he would be fueled in different direction, like, you know, the worst hormones you've ever seen, and he would react differently. And so and it was really weird because it took me through like a several week, you know, energized kind of like instruction schooling, and it was like could he couldn't speak words because it was like the magnetic side that was out of the spectrum, but it was cognitive, and it could leave things in certain ways and leave notes or scratch out like writing and those things, and it left me. I mean, it would completely bend light during pictures for me, and it did a lot of things, but I had to ask it, and it took me through these trainings and tones, and it was like certain things fueled him that hurt me, and it was like we are a yin and yang kind of duality where it, you know, it was really weird. It really explained a lot with time and those things, and I cross-reference and check these things, and like it would tell me about people's died first and last names 27 years ago, about things that would happen there was a plane crash it was on the second of the year, first of the year, and he told me the time down to the minute it would happen out of the Alaska, and it's wild, like how perfect this was. It was I tried every bit of my rationality to disqualify it, but I just can't, and I don't know what to say about it, but I know that because of my frequency increase and the ability to let go and look at it, I was able to do it. And same with the Nibiru and the government. I tried so hard to say that there has to be a reason for them to be doing what they do and the way they are doing it, but I just can't. I can't seem to see that they are 100% in a positive way. It's not a positive motion, because I've pulled up so many things where it's like it's hidden in there and it's encrypted, and there is one page that I do want to show you here before we're done, but it's how how they line up everything, and like it's encrypted. Like when you ask yourself what came first, the chicken or the egg, this is where I kind of see, if you look at the entire spectrum, it goes from one side to the other, and it's almost like the chicken came on one side and the egg came on the other, and time will bounce back and forth by the frequency of the lights changing the time as we would go forward faster or backwards faster. And what makes sense with that is that let's say we're on a loop and going in a figure 8, and we're rotating through time or through space or however it is. There's going to be gravitational pulls that are more on one side than the other during specific times. If we're further away, they say that as we get further from the center, time speeds up, or we're going faster and faster. Well, if all that antimatter is a magnetic power, the same as the black holes and all that stuff, then it would do exactly that, because as you got further away from the center point, you would be, your fractional growth would be changing and increasing, because it'd be like you blowing up a balloon. You would have more surface area as it got wider and wider, so it would be getting thinned out, as well as you would be going faster, as well as if when you were going faster, you'd have less density, and all that stuff would all be happening all at once. And it's now this part's not finished at all, but I do want to show it to you, and this goes back to the biblical symbolization of a lot of this stuff. And these are things that are drawn a long time ago. You got the moon duality, and it goes on the inside and switches with them, but it's still polar. If you look at this, black is actually a south pole color in all of our magnetic, those kind of properties. Kind of like or it's either black and white or it's red and blue, like the cat in Alice in Wonderland. But if you look at what a LOM is a light spike that's in the electromagnetic scale right before when it turns from magnetism to electricity. It's a spike that happens, a light will flicker, and then it changes. When you kill the lamb, or slay the lamb, or whatever you want to do it call. Now it's all symbolic for a lot of these. I have a bunch of them, but I'm just starting to plug them all in. We got the snake. It's a brass snake, because brass has a specific property if you want to look into that, but it snares the magnetism, and that's what the snake dictates. If you look at the snake in any of the religions, or if you look at Jesus when he comes back in Revelations, he is described exactly like the magnetic scale. It's exactly the same thing right there. And if here's just a transistor, and this is a drawing of how those mate right there. And so as they go through, they mate, and that's where your mating is. And when you hear, and that's the same thing when I think about these over here, these aren't grandma and daughter and whatever, and it's the same thing when you're talking about in religion. 3 out of 5 of your boys will be taken. 7 out of 2 will be taken. Well, when we cross that zodiac sign and we travel around, we're going to lose certain properties. The remainders are going to be different of that virgin energy, of the Jewish that got beat out by the, I mean, there's so many different ways. I don't want to bring any specific religion in there, but it's described in the Bible, written out like it's parallel, fact for fact, line for line, octave for octave. I mean, you take the book of numerologies, or you take the Taurus, and it's broke up into octaves and all that stuff. It's to the T. It's perfect. And and from each different perspective, I believe that Jesus is all 12 of the disciples, and he's one under each way, depending on what his perception is and how his characteristics. And yes, the Jesus could be the greatest guy in Christianity and the worst in Hindu, a fallen angel, but it's really because, if you're the best basketball player on the Bulls, you're not going to be liked by the Knicks. It's just part of it. And if you break them down as a whole and you put a secret in each one of the religions, then you have to be mature enough to make friendship and peace between the world before you got all of the history out there, or before you had all of all of the power. You would have to be friendly with each of the religions and everything, and it would control the greed, and it would make us not just have a world power, just run everybody over. And if you look at it, how it's going, the magnetic properties make more greed, and I believe that's why the Freemasons were split up into different groups, so nobody had all the power. But if you look how it's ran now, then it's just they stomped all over it anyway. But I found a lot of little secret things in there. But if you can block, just like you block sound by sending the inverse, there's secrets out there that talk about blocking the other electromagnetics, and then you're talking about moving time. And when you block time, then you can do whatever. And I had multi-million-dollar piece of artwork with Jesus on it that's 2,000 years old, telling me 38 light years in 38 minutes with the formulas, and it walked through as I changed the spectrum up and up. I went through each one of the math problems, and it was written in English. And just the same as there's, you change the way you think and you see things. And when I'm messing with the frequencies, there's often times where I'll have giant intelligence spikes, and they'll be more selfish, and then I'll change it up, and I'll realize what's going on, and it'll be exact opposite. And it's all there in front of us. And the way that it's really hard to explain the Nibiru thing in a sit down, because we would be here for a month with background and each civilization and their style, but all mythology is astronomical, and it's about energy, and it's all the same. All of our history that lines up from all the way to Beethoven to, I mean, it's all lines up so perfect, like everything was already happened for a reason. And when I would try to manipulate time with the sounds and things, I would watch a violent storm happen as it snapped back, because let's say that all these octaves are lined up right over the top of each other. And as they would go through each other, let's just look at this. This will make it. So if these swivel up and down around these balls and go through here, if I realign something because I changed some energy, what would happen is the other octave wouldn't have it there. if I moved my body 10 feet over to the side, my magnetic shield that's around us that can't see, that's not in this octave, would not line up in the same place as if I didn't move. So when we cause the destruction and the disharmony and the negative frequencies in our thoughts and emotions that shoot out negative or bad things or doubt or any of that, we cause that doubt in that other dimension that mirrors us. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely it does. And it's fascinating the way that you've kind of put this together. You know, what would be nice is if you could actually have an opportunity to get a GoPro or a Sony Action Cam or some type of video camera where you could, you know, when you're doing these experiments, you're messing with the light spectrum, the sound spectrum, you've got these different pyramids and such. It'd be fascinating to see what you see. You know, if you could do some footage, maybe next time, Tyler, we could have an opportunity to see what you're doing actually on scene. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to do that. What one thing that's for sure that's a little bit tough is that just like if the time doesn't line up direct like immediate, like I could send them to you and you would see them, and it's like the more the time that happens, it's almost like its timeline and our timeline aren't lining up, so it's no long like it'll morph out of it over a period of time. Like I'll send you some stuff and you'll see it now and then you'll see it in a little bit. I have some, but you know, keep a look on it for you. Throw it out there. I mean, you're more than welcome to.
It'd
But
be a fun experiment to do also with the people that have an opportunity to watch the Leak Project, to listen to this broadcast, to watch the podcast. You know, they could do the same thing. You could send me the footage, but we could put together, we could have a broadcast, a presentation. So
right.
the next 50,000 people that watch the video, they can watch it on Tuesday and see one thing like you're claiming. And then on Wednesday, they can see something completely different. I mean, how cool would that be for the, you know, for the skeptics out there, and even for yourself to bring more justification to what you're seeing?
Right, yeah, and absolutely. And it's like I said, it's going to make a difference whether it's daytime or night by the energy that leaves the sun, by how strong it is compared to the others, because it is just like these circles. If we jacked a bunch of red in there, obviously this spectrum's going to change. And so as the sun would be more, it would be stronger. Those light, it's not just. I mean, you're only seeing the reflection of it. You're not seeing the action, the all the stuff that it's doing to it, and it's affecting your brain and everything. And really, that's why it's taken me so long to perfect a lot of the parts of the sites, because it's so hard to prove something